How are you? This is the Enzo DiCosenzo podcast, January 16th. So for NJCU, this is your the first day, and fortunately or unfortunately, we're going to do a YouTube today. It would have been great to come in and see everybody, especially the night class, which only meets once a week. But we're going to see you next week, next Tuesday, which is the 23rd, and the Thursday session, the 18th. I'll see the 363, the intermediate micro, which is a lot of people from last semester anyway. We'll see you on January 18th. Okay, so today we're going to talk about cost, volume, profit, which is a micro topic, but it's a good topic for the macro class also. So this will work for both sections, which a lot of our material will work for both sections. Okay, so cost, volume, profit, and I like to pride myself on the things that we talk about in these classes, that it's material that me being a practitioner, and that's a mild way to say what I do. I'm far more than a practitioner, but I'm a private banker, and I like to share with you guys what's important, what the people who are worth, uber amounts of money, what they think and what their questions to me are, and I'm putting the same questions to you. So folks, I'm telling you, people who manage great amounts of wealth and are wealthy themselves are very tuned in to conversations. If you're speaking the language that they're interested in, they're going to come find you. Okay, and that's what we're doing in here. That's the point. That was the Jesuit point from long ago, and at least it's my point today. I don't know what the dogma is coming out of Rome. Who knows? But at this point, but that's what I'm doing. So trying to help you out as best I can. So these are what we're going to talk about in the next hour, because there's 80 slides here. It'll take an hour for me to get through them, and that'll be today's lecture. And I already posted about a 40-minute lecture already, and then I'll do some Excel. Maybe Friday, Saturday, and Sunday I'll start posting some Excel, because actually, looking at the calendar, we're not meeting on the 23rd. We're meeting on the 30th, and then I might have a business trip that I was telling my class last semester. Remember the folks from last semester I was saying in September? Well, I think we're going to finally make this trip now, and it's January, so you're going to be on YouTube on your own for a couple classes. So, but everything I do is back. My course, you can take it live, you can take it remote. It's the same course. Okay, it's not a different a delivery of anything. And I've got like 300 plus videos, and probably this semester we'll be hitting 350, and that's a nice number with the podcast. And at this point, it's just the Enzo DiCosenzo podcast. I'm not associating it with any particular institution or school or anything or college or anything like that. And they're all publicly available. So we want to make it just available to people who are interested in these topics. So yeah, cost volume. So this is a micro topic, but it's useful for the macro class. Now also for the micro students out there, we're going to go through what the U.S. Central Bank's documents released in December for the December meeting, and that's more of a macro topic. So you're getting a nice mosaic of topics from me. I'm not just, when I was at Rutgers, I stuck with I taught calculus at Rutgers, and everybody covered the same chapters and those kinds of, which is fine. But in economics, I think it's my duty to teach you from my experience and from what's very important. And we'll go through point sub formulas and we'll do all that stuff. So anyway, let's begin. So variable and fixed costs, we're going to look at that. That's extraordinarily important. Warren Buffett would say if Warren Buffett says it's important, it's important. Relevant range, mixed costs, the 5 components of the cost, volume, profit analysis, what a contribution margin is, the 3 ways to determine the break-even point. That's a very good exercise. So this will take about 5 classes to go through, and we'll work out a lot of problems while we're at it. So to give you guys a lot of practice at this. Formulas for determining sales required to earn a target net income. What does your volume need to be to achieve a certain, and that's going to give you practice with the income statement. And anytime I can talk about an income statement, I'm happy to do it. What margin of safety is, again, that sounds very familiar to the Warren Buffett crowd out there. Warren Buffett is one of the richest guys out there, and I was shocked at another Jersey City school. When I mentioned his name, people just sat there and said, "Who's Warren Buffett?" At Rutgers, it was Warren Buffett's current assistant went to Rutgers, so there's pictures of him all over the place at Rutgers in Newark and down in Piscataway. There's When I was there 10 years ago, before I came to Jersey City. Uh, so Warren Buffett's very well known at Rutgers because his assistant went there. And I don't know how she got down to Omaha, Nebraska from here, but somehow she did that. I'm sure quite a culture shock from Newark and Piscataway to the suburbs of Nebraska. Formulas for computing margin safety and essential features of a cost volume profit income statement. There was a very good article from the Wall Street Journal that was published that I didn't go through and highlight, but I will try to do that at some point. What was that article called? I have it here someplace. Yeah, it says lean. Sorry for the red. It says lean factories find it hard to cut jobs even in a slump. At a factory that churns out plastic parts for everything from spray cans to blasting caps, laying off just one worker can be more trouble than it's worth. Well, and without getting through all the details of that, even college professor, whatever it might be, it's it's very difficult to replace people. And it's something when you're younger, you're getting through school and you're trying to start your career, you get I think very uptight about, oh, am I going to get fired or replaced or this and that? But folks, let me tell you, in a very short amount of time, as you become specialized, it's a sane decision maker would find it very difficult to replacing people doing a very specialized job. Okay, but you can't count on sanity all the time. You'll learn that as you work, but as you go through life. But it's very hard to replace people. So, especially skilled people. But we'll get to more of that as the course rolls onward. So for cost behavior analysis, variable cost, fixed cost, relevant range, mixed cost, and identifying the differences between variable and fixed. And then the cost volume profit analysis involves the CVP income statement, break-even analysis, target net income margins of safety, change in the business environment, the statement, variations on the income statement. But again, anytime we can talk about income statements, I'm a happy guy. So cost behavior analysis is a study of how specific costs respond to changes in the level of business activity. We had a study for the healthcare deal that I'm working on, and there was a sensitivity analysis, which is what this is. A sensitivity analysis is GDP changes or interest rate changes or the number of beds change. What do your earnings look like? And especially if you're an owner in that business, you really care about that. And I hope the day comes where you do become an owner of something, and if you get into private banking, you'll start to see the you'll start to see how the compensation works. You're not paid hourly or anything like that. You're paid as a part of the earnings and you want that. And folks, there's your retirement cash flow. Okay, you become you're a 3% owner in 3 businesses. You've more than satisfied. That's more money than you can spend. Okay, so I'm always trying to just have a discussion with you guys about how to play that game, and it's a long process. You're not sitting in a room having an interview and you're suit and tie, and it's not that simple. And people, I think, get nervous over that. I've had students where it panics them. There was a guy last semester when I sort of described my path, and I think the guy had other problems, but I was the least of his worries. But I think it panics people sometimes to hear that it's not so, on or off or up or down, or it's not so binary. Okay, it takes relationships and working with people, and everything can't just be one way or no way, right? There's got to be a synergy. There's got to be a coming together of the minds and a sort of a comfort of working with people. And I worked on that very hard for a very long time, and it's finally paying off. So I recommend that to you guys to just go with things and try to work with people. As getting along with people is very important. It's very important to be able to, and being good to work with. If people dread working with you, that there's some, or if you dread working with other people, that there's problems there, and that doesn't have a lot of staying power. Situations like that. So anyway, how specific costs respond to changes in the level of business activity. As costs change, some can remain the same, and how management plans operations and decides between alternative courses of action, applies to all types of businesses and entities. And I was involved, not anymore, but long ago, with the local political groups in Essex County. And there was always traffic issues in Essex County and how to address that and make an extra lane or block a lane off or those. That's so in a governmental part, that's you're sort of trying to solve problems in that respect. But in terms of a business, if you have a variety of products or a variety of services, a law firm, what's the law firm going to, what kind of cases are the law firm going to spend their time on? Are they going to spend their time on drunk driving cases? Are they going to spend their time on personal injury cases? Are they going to spend their time on immigration cases? Are they going to do criminal defense? Are they going to do contracts? I remember when I was taking a legal studies at Queens College in the last decade. It was 2014 to 2018 is when I attended Queens College. Oops, one second. That's what I was waiting for. It was when I was 2014, 2018 is when I attended Queens College. One of the professors said to me, if you walk into a law firm and they say they do everything, turn around and walk out. Okay, because the legal profession should be you should want a specialized person in that handles the issues and the questions and the problems that you're bringing to them. If you don't go to a criminal defense guy for immigration or marriage law or anything, or trusts and things of that nature, or real estate or whatever, there's about 10 areas of the law. Real estate, trusts are wealthy people passing on their wealth from one generation to the next and minimizing taxes. Immigration law, marriage law, corporate laws, contracts, and things of that nature, and the various litigations that are involved in that. And civil litigation in and of itself has certain areas where people just concentrate on certain types of legal questions. Certain criminal defense is its own thing. Okay, so there's about 10 areas. I don't know if and bankruptcy law and thing. I didn't take marriage law. I didn't take immigration law. But I took bankruptcy law. I took all the corporate stuff. Intellectual property. Intellectual property is highly specialized legal. You have to take a test to be sort of, I don't know if you're being certified but to practice law, to be a patent lawyer and things of that nature. To do intellectual properties, you have to take specific. There's requirements to practice that kind of law. So as the economic environment changes, the business is going to change along with it. The starting point is measuring key business activities, sales dollars, miles driven, room occupancy. If it's a hotel, if it's I remember as a kid, there was a music school where a few miles were from where I lived, and I remember people were doing guitar and piano and singing and dancing and all sorts of things. Hotels, how much of the hotel's filling up in a certain area. If it's a trucking company, and there's this whole supply chain field, this whole supply chain analysis. That's all, to get products from the ports in Elizabeth and to get them out to wherever they got to go, to the Amazon warehouses and whatever it might be. That's a whole airlines had to route all the planes and all the connecting flights and things of that nature. It's done very mathematically. Okay, so activity level. So I'm sure you're always hearing in the popular media, an ex-girlfriend of mine who works with the airline industry, and wonderful girl from the Caribbean, and she had her heart set on, and I was happy that she achieved that she had her heart set on working for the airlines in Essex County, and I think it's United she works for, and I'm very proud of her that she achieved that goal. But yeah, let me tell you, the younger you are, you'll never have the opportunities that you have now at 25 or in your 20s. They'll be generally, not everybody. I probably have more opportunities now than I ever did before, but I probably have better. Well, I'll say that I have more quality opportunities right now compared to maybe when I was 25. I don't think the opportunities I have right now didn't exist for me when I was 25 years old, but they exist now, and they're high dollar opportunities. That's not typical. Most people, that they have the best chance to certainly in the corporate world, the corporate ladder, as Charlie Munger would say, your best chance is in your 20s to move around. There's no company that's not going to be interested in a relatively well-educated 25-year-old. But yeah, so the airlines, should they fly to Atlanta? Should they fly to Los Angeles or not fly to maybe some of the lesser traveled routes or whatever it might be? That's all. That behaviors are all analyzed, and sure, maximizing profit, sure, but to maximize the operations of the company, what they're doing to you have and which at the end of the day is measured in profit, and if you're maximizing profits, you're minimizing costs and maximizing your returns and all those other types of things. But you want to get the best return for what your investment is, and I look at things that way. Companies use different measurement bases. Changes in volume of activity should be correlated with changes in costs. Activity levels are selected as called activity or volume index. So, yeah, economists and math guys love an index. In other words, as the S&P 500 moves up or down, is that a good or bad thing? That's simple. You're not worrying about dollars or profits, or you're not worrying about the units of what you're thinking about. As the index moves up, it's good. As it moves down, it's bad. And you'll meet plenty social scientists who will be very happy to create these indices they'll be very very happy to create these indices. So this activity index identifies the activities of course change in the behavior of costs, allows costs to be classified as variable, fixed, or mixed. And again, this is all sort of the thinking part of it. And once we get into the definitions here, costs that vary in total directly and proportionally with changes in activity. If you're painting cars, you got to buy paint for the car. If you're painting houses, you got to buy paint for it. So you're not going to buy, dozens of cans of, dozens of gallons of white paint if you don't have, 10 houses to paint, that kind of a thing. You're not going to just sit on that inventory. So that increases your cost. If you have one house to paint versus 10 houses to paint, proportionally, you're going to have bigger material costs with the 10 houses versus the one house. Same roofing tiles, all that kind of thing, piping, electrical, right? All that stuff. If the activity level increases by 10%, variable cost increase by 10%. That's a variable cost. If the activity level declines, right, then you have a concurrent decline in variable cost by the same percentage or similar percentages. Variable costs remain the same per unit at every level of activity. That's the general idea of a variable cost. And now we're getting into very specific examples here. Here, I always like to sort of separate what I'm talking about here. We'll go through the problems here, and I'll discuss, the Damon company or whatever it might be. But just know that I'm going to have, this is all modeled out in Excel in the detail that the field demands. So in between Rutgers and coming to you guys in Jersey City, I worked for an Excel training firm, and that Excel training firm, we went out and trained investment bankers to model companies and do valuations and come up with a number, right? You need an answer in finance, you need an answer. And as wrong as an answer might turn out to be, but you have something, some direction that you're looking at. And we'll discuss the problems as they are on the PowerPoints, but just know that there's a full model in Excel that corresponds to all these. So I don't think that, what I'm trying to say is, don't panic and say, oh, well, you didn't explain this enough, I don't really understand. We're going to go over this again probably over the weekend. I'll publish the Excel models for this particular chapter, so you guys have that to work on. It says Damon Company manufactures radios that contain a digital clock. And again, I grew up where my dad had a clock radio in his room, and it's what it sounded like. There was a digital clock there, and then there was a radio. And at the time, radio, having someone talk to you over the airwaves, was considered an important way to communicate in society. So it says the activity index is the number of radios produced. As Damon manufactures each radio, the total cost of the clocks increases by $10. As Damon manufactures each radio, the total cost. Okay. Fine. And this shows the total cost of the clocks will be $20,000 if there's produced, right. If you're doing 2,000 radios, that's $20,000. If you have 5 times the costs for clocks, that means you have 5 times the rate. So in other words, to go from 2,000 to 10,000 is 5 times. To go from 20,000 to 100,000 is 5 times. So as you can see, the line here, you're very proportional. And we'll go through, we'll have an equation for this, like we'll have the equation of a straight line. So we'll do some good math stuff. So there you go. I mean, there's your economics. Okay, but I'm using problems from the accounting books because I think it's a little bit closer to what it's really going to look like. I'm a big fan of I use the Yale economic textbook, the Yale series of economics, which is posted on Blackboard. But also knowing that those guys, I mean, look, Schiller is a very practical guy. He has a company, all these other kinds of. He works like I do. He works for real in the field, but these, you have to be very careful with people, learning from people where they don't really do it for a living at all, and especially something like this where there's no theoretical finance. I mean, it's all got to be practice based. Okay, so the more of this that you understand in terms of what the expectation is out in the world, I think the better off, the more the course is going to be worth and valuable to you. We see variable cost remains the same per unit as level change, level activity change, which is fine. This is, yeah. So this is, and so this next slide is what that clock costs just to plug it into the radio, kind of a thing. So that's going to be the one to the next. These are commodities more or less. So one digital clock, it's not going to be more expensive to do one or the other, right? The first one and the 1,000th one should all cost $10 to install. All right, so the activity index is the number of radios produced. As Damon manufactures each radio, the total cost of the clocks is still $10. And this is a very academic, cerebral way to say, each clock installation costs $10. That's about what. So the graph of this would be y equals 10, or the whatever Harvard the cost, whatever the y-axis variable would be, is $10 per x, for every number of radios produced. And now we've put those together. And again, we'll go through the equations of the straight lines and the horizontal lines. We'll go through all of that in the Excel work that we're going to be doing. Fixed costs are the same in total regardless of the changes in the activity level. So the per unit cost varies inversely with activity. So as volume increases, the unit cost declines. This is for, in other words, if you've got a house and you got whatever, it's $12,000 a year property tax, which is actually pretty low, for especially in the suburbs. And then you're split. If one person's taking care of that, right, that's $12,000 for that person. But so the cost, that's $12,000. If one person lives in that house or 12 people live in that house, it's still. I mean, we can argue that obviously if you're making a boarding house, obviously the municipality is going to tax a single family home and a multi-family home differently, but taking that complication out of the equation for a second, with property taxes being fixed for a year, let's say they're fixed for a year. If one person lives there, that one person gets married, and the wife works, you have two people splitting the 12,000, so it's 6,000 each. So the per unit cost varies inversely with activities. So in other words, the more people we spread that cost out over, each person, the per unit cost per person declines. That's really what this is being said here. And there's an example here: property taxes or insurance or rent or depreciation. Okay, so I had a caretaker we have a caretaker somehow. A miracle happened, and we found a caretaker for mom, and she needed a phone line. So instead of her, I had somebody in my life a number of years ago who needed a phone also, and she had to have her own phone and her own phone company, all this other stuff. Instead of just $10 more for an extra line, right? She had to go the whole $150 version of things. So I'm with the caretaker. I just put her on our plan, and that was that. So. Damon Company leases its production facilities at a cost of $10,000 a month. So the fixed cost will be constant. And then if they're making 2,000 radios, or if making 10,000 radios, they're spreading that rent over more units, and per unit that's going to decline because it's a fixed number. You're dividing by a bigger number as you produce more radios, and so the per unit cost is going to decline. It leases a production facility that's $10,000 a month. So the total fixed cost will remain constant at every level of activity, but the per unit basis, the cost of rent will decline. So at 2,000 units, the cost is $5 per unit, and at 10,000 units, it's $1 per unit. And you can see the graphic here. And this is what do we call this? I mean, you could say it's sort of a negative exponential is sort of what that is. But there's a couple different words. You've already hyperbola. Excuse me, but there's equations for that. Excuse me for yawning. And we've repeated these pictures again. You have the horizontal fixed cost number, and then you have the per unit number of the fixed costs. And this is a question. It says variable costs or costs that remain the same at every activity, vary in proportion directly with. So it's B. This one is going to be B. Actually, A and B, right? Obviously, it's A and B. It's not neither. So they vary in total directly and proportional with the changes in activity, and they're the same at every per unit level of activity. Is that this? Is this it? No, this is not it. But one of the articles in here, there's usually two or three articles from about 10 years ago, mostly the Wall Street Journal, but it could be other magazines too, where the guys who wrote the accounting book just tried to relate the topics to what's going on in the world, which I try to do every class. And this is a story about a guy who stopped. He was a teacher, stopped teaching, and he founded a furniture woodworking business. He's got about 100 employees, and the margins were thin. And cost control was important. They kept no inventory. They used customer deposits to buy the materials, and they had computer-driven machines that cut most of the standardized parts, the hinges and the joints. And then they were a little more creative in assembling their final products here. But the hinges and the joints and sort of the basic building blocks were commodities. Okay, and so the creativity of how creative you made a piece of furniture as opposed to some mass-produced desk or chair or something certainly weighs on your cost. I didn't print that article out, but it's certainly worth looking for. It's in Forbes. Relevant range is again, if you've got I brought my car to inspection recently, and there's three. I go to the Frelinghuysen Avenue motor vehicle inspection station in Newark, and there's 3 lanes. I'm sitting here guessing. Let's say it takes 10 minutes to, it's probably longer than that, but let's say it takes 10 minutes to inspect your car, and you got 3 lanes going. So every hour you did 6 cars. So you do about 20 cars an hour to get inspected. So in a day, you could do about 150 cars or so, in terms of, and maybe they could, there's ways to, because that seems low. Maybe there's ways they can ratchet that up at some of these places. Because think if there's, New Jersey has 8 million people, and if half of them drive and all that, how do you do all that? But so relevant range is what matters to that particular motor vehicle agency. So if their maximum is 200 cars a day or something, that's what they care about. They don't care about what the impact is going to be on cars that they're never going to inspect, or cars that they'll never get to, and those kinds of things. So in other words, so the range of possibilities of activities is matters, and you should, from whatever it is you're analyzing, you should understand that. It says it's usually a straight line relationship, and it doesn't exist for either variable cost, or fixed cost. Okay. The relationships for variable costs and change activities are generally curvilinear. So you're getting into some modeling stuff here. And as I said, when I started teaching economics 10 years ago, people who make these models, the numerical methods folks and the real mathematical model makers, that's, you spend that, if that's what you're doing, that's what you spend your time on. Okay, that takes a long time and a lot of knowledge to be useful and good at that. So if you're a model maker, that's what you're not on a, you're not making deals, and you're not doing all that stuff. Okay, you know you're focusing on, folks. I apologize for the yawning. You're focusing on your phone calls and relationships and travel and things and meetings and things of that nature. You're not sitting there with your head in the numerical methods textbook. Okay, but we're touching those topics here a little bit. It says for fixed cost relationships, also nonlinear, and some fixed costs will not change over the entire range of activities, while other fixed costs may change. And again, a lot of this stuff, and we have a step function here. So, but again, and again, the reason I picked this particular accounting book is I think they do a good job from a former math guy like myself. Let me say, once a math guy, always a math guy. I'm not a former math guy. I'm just teaching more applied material than I previously used to teach. The math in this book is good. I have the yawns somehow. So fixed cost, it's a step function based on activity. This could be opening, three different factories. I'm sure you see Amazon, especially around the holidays, where of course they have their trucks, and their trucks are labeled, and they see people in their cars delivering packages. But I've also seen guys in Amazon jackets in rented trucks, because there's so much volume that they had to step out of the. They certainly did, and for whatever reason didn't feel it was useful or efficient to buy more trucks, but just rent a couple for the 6 or 8 week holidays of the year, especially Christmas, where there's a lot of activity, a lot of delivery activity, and people are delivering from rider trucks and rented trucks and U-Haul trucks and things of that nature. You can see relevant range, and it bothers me. You see this little shading here? I still can't. I can do a lot of stuff in Excel, and you're going to see that over this semester. I still can't do this. I still can't make that little shaded area. I don't know why. I have to figure out how to do that. So if you know, drop me an email. Usually, I think I've asked that question in past years. I never got an answer. But if there's somebody out there that knows how to do these shadings in Excel, drop me an email on how to do it. Okay. I briefly taught at NJT, and I forget what someone taught me. Someone taught me something about the stem and box plots, and I didn't know how to make them in Excel, and someone showed me how to do it. And I was really grateful for that. So I learned from you guys too. Don't ever think that I don't. That was relevant range, and it says, well, not curvilinear. Well, curvilinear, yeah, it's C. This one is C. All right, with the range of activity the company expects to operate during a specific year. Making this graph, this thing with the red line and the green line, you'll make something like that. The fixed cost plus the variable cost gives you the total cost. The variable cost would start at 0. It would just be a straight line starting from the origin, but you've shifted it by your fixed cost amount, and then that you start the line there, and then there's a combined line here that starts at that particular point. It says cost of both variable cost elements and fixed cost elements, and the change in total would not proportionally with change in activity level. Okay, but this is very good to be able to make this. That's excellent. Okay, and again, the people who manage a lot of money care about stuff like that. These, which says do it, it's kind of it's an awkward label for something, if you ask me. But it says Helena Company. That's very Greek. Helena Company reports the following costs at 2 levels of production at 10 and 20,000 units. I probably have an example of that, what direct materials will cost and what maintenance will cost. And what you want to do is you want to go through this, and you want to sort through what's a fixed cost, what's a variable cost, and what potentially might be a mixed cost. The mixed cost won't be so proportional. The variable costs are directly proportional. And obviously the fixed one is easy. If you're producing 10,000 units or 20,000 units, you have this depreciation is the same. Rent is the same. The utilities might be fixed, right? That might be fixed, kind of a thing. Labor is hopefully proportional. Maintenance might be fixed because you're doubling the units but not doubling maintenance, so that's mixed. But direct material is variable. Okay, so that's how you see, and you can see there's your 3 variable costs. These, if you double the units, you double the costs. Those 3 that happens. Fixed is right there. Those don't change at all, and then the mixed where it changes but not so proportionally. There's these methods. It's a high-low method. Sure, we could entertain learning something about this, right? It can be classified into their fixed and variable elements. The high-low method uses total costs incurred at both the high and low levels to classify mixed costs, and differences in costs between high and low levels represent variable costs. It's only variable costs change as activity level change. So what you're going to be looking for with something like this is how proportional the costs change, and also the range of what your universe looks like, taking from discrete mathematics, what the universe of your costs are going to look like. And now we're getting to these equations, and I'm a very big person in helping you understand these models and not memorizing a bunch of equations. I don't have any of these equations memorized, but I understand all the models now. Okay, and I think that's an important piece of the puzzle. So variable cost per unit. So it's going to be total costs or changes in total costs, and then high minus low activity level. Okay, we always want to prove out that that's going to work in Excel. So we'll take a look at that when the time comes. High-low for the methods for the mixed cost. You take a couple months here and miles driven and total costs and things of that nature. And what we're going to do is change in the costs, the high and the low, the 30 and the 63, and then the units 50 to 20. Okay, so the change the high minus low is $1.10 per unit. But what you want to do, and we're not going to do it here because you can't do it in PowerPoints, but you can do it in Excel, is you want to determine the cost divided by the mileage driven per month and examine those numbers and try to figure out what's going on. That's how I would approach this. This high low thing. I mean, it's cute, but yeah, I've taught this a couple times. I'm still trying to wrap my mind around why that's useful to do it like that. But these guys are telling us that it is, and we're sort of taking their word for it. And if you notice what they did here, this is Excel sort of inserted. There's no scenario or situation that you can't model using Excel. There's no You can model anything in Excel if it's taxes, accounting, whatever. Okay, statistical analysis, how the S&P 500 is behaving, employment numbers, inflation. You could do all that stuff in Excel. Okay, so hopefully you guys get your hands around that. This is the Metro Transit example where you have a couple variable costs and you're classifying the lows and the highs, from that, um, and then you have a total cost and you're adding, then you're just subtracting out the variable to get the fixed. Okay, so I suppose that, but again, this is going to be clearer when we sit down to really work it. Okay, and we will. Okay, so if maintenance costs are 8,000 plus 110 per mile, you're creating a formula where you have the fixed, and then you have the variable part, and then you have the 45,000 miles times the variable cost plus that fixed gives you 57,500. But again, let's work this. Let's work these um, in Excel. This article I looked it up on my Wall Street Journal database. It says there was a recession that started in '08, had a big implication for employment. But a surprise was some manufacturers, the number of jobs was actually lower than in previous jobs lost was lower than in previous recessions. One of the main explanations for this was was that between 2000 and 2008, the factories adopted lean manufacturing practices where they weren't just relying on 1950 style Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan factories where they just marched an army in there and everybody just working like they're in the army kind of a thing. It became much more sophisticated. You can turn the machine off or not use it for a while if you're not building a specific model of car or a specific product or a specific type of computer or something like that. Okay, so you don't lay off a machine. You just, like I just said, you shut it down. A person has pensions, they got a family, and they got people relying on them to pay them. So it's a much more socially complicated situation to start laying all these folks off. So it says and more machines and fewer. Actually, the manufacturers are relying on more automation than fewer and a few highly skilled workers, so the single employee was supporting far more dollars in sales and require a larger decline in sales before an employee would need to be laid off. I have to continue to the break even point. I have this article. I didn't outline it, but I think that it's an important thing for us to discuss. And I like them. I like the more micro topics I can kind of, because I'm mainly teaching microeconomics. I know I have the macro section at NJCU, but like I said, we'll look at the central bank comments and that'll cover us for all the the employment topics, inflation, everything, economic output, all the things you need for a macro course. We'll have that covered. Instead of making layoffs, the manufacturers resorted to cutting employee hours and that kind of a thing. It says, would you characterize labor costs as being fixed cost, a variable cost, or something else in this particular situation? And if you run to the textbook, let's run to the textbook and see what the textbook is got for us here. There it is. It says, would you characterize labor costs as being fixed, variable, or something else in these particular situations? It says, because the labor costs are essentially unchanged for most levels of production, they're primarily fixed. It could be described as being a step function. If production gets too far outside the normal range, workers' hours will change. If production goes too low, hours are cut, and it goes too high, overall time hour. Yeah, so that logically models what we just lectured on, which I'm always happy about. Again, distinguishing between variable and fixed costs. Again, there's an airline example. They make a profit when it reduces domestic fares by 30%. What reduction in costs or increase in passengers will be required to make the profit? Cut domestic fares by the American will have to do the following: increase passengers, cut variable costs for the flights. Its fixed costs won't change. Their depreciation, the rent at Newark Airport, if they own Newark Airport, whatever it might be, if they pay property taxes, which is almost the same thing as depreciation in a way because it's fixed. So it says, it's reducing. In other words, American and look, this comes across very simple. But if you reduce fares by 30%, what's going to be? Are you anticipating more people buying tickets, and the more people buying tickets, that's going to overwhelm the reduction in price. In other words, to boost your revenue, and again, increase passengers, cut fares. So in other words, you're reducing variable costs, increase the number of people, and that's how you would hope to still be profitable by reducing your price. Okay, but this is a good one. But again, we're discussing this, but the model of this is, I think, better served when we look at it in Excel. It says mixed cost consists of a variable cost element and a fixed cost element. Okay, that we know. Burns company accumulates the following data concerning mixed costs. So you have a certain number of monitors produced, or keyboards produced, or software produced, or something like that. Then you have a bunch of costs, and it says compute the variable and fixed cost elements using the high-low method. So again, this is going to be better served if we you need an Excel model for this. And it says, what is it? It says if the company produces 6,000 units, compute the variable and fixed using the high-low method for 6,000 units, and then for each one of those, the units that are illustrated here, and we can certainly do all of that. To subtract the high-low costs, the high-low units, and you got $1.30 per unit. And then with the fixed, you took care of that, and then took $1.30 times the 9,800, and then $1.30 times the 7,000, which is the low one. Okay, and the idea is that it's supposed to give you the same fixed cost. Okay, and again, we could work this exercise out in Excel. And if the company produces 6,000 units, what's the total cost? Well, again, you're taking the 2,000 and 130 times your units, that kind of a thing. And yeah, this would have been a good place to sort of stop, but we're just gonna just blow through everything here. It says the cost volume profit analysis is to say the effects of the change in the cost and the volume on the company's profits. A critical factor in management decisions. It's important in profit planning. Okay, they have some nice graphics here. So we're gonna look at and actually the thing that I really care about the most, we didn't even get to it yet. So let's continue to lecture here. Until we get to this. We have a volume or level of activity. You have unit selling prices, and then you're going to create a variable cost per unit. You have a total fixed cost total fixed cost, and then a sales mix. This is very. These are well worth the pictures. The guys who wrote this book were certainly more my generation, and you can see that this is very Saturday morning cartoonish the way they sort of threw this all together. You make some assumptions. The behavior of the cost and revenue is linear throughout the relevant range of the activity index. Costs can be classified accurately as either variable or fixed. Change in activity are the only factors that affect costs. All units produced are sold. When more than one type of product is sold, the sales mix remains constant. It says, which of the following is not involved in cost volume profit analysis? Well, it's going to say C, but I don't know how. You can do fixed cost per unit, but the usefulness of that, I suppose, in how the academics define cost volume profit analysis, I guess you consider that not being so relevant. But sales mixes, prices, and volumes are considered relevant to that. But certainly that's an important measure, an important statistic. The state now, again, if you're a securities analyst, this stuff is you're reading the extra the annual reports, which are written for external users. The managerial folks or the internal folks get to see, I suppose, a little more detail, and which analysts like me would be happy to see, but may not always have the benefit of having access to that particular data. You can classify costs and expenses as fixed or variable. There's a contribution margin. It's the revenue remaining after deducting variable costs. It's reported in the body of the statement and reports the same net income as traditional income statement. So again, anything that involves income statements, we're going to care a lot about that. Okay. But yeah, anytime you see any of this stuff, you're going to anything that involves income statement analysis, you're going to want to know about it. There's a bunch of examples in Excel. It says Vargo video produces a high definition digital camcorder with 15 optical zoom, or 15 times optical zoom, and a widescreen LCD monitor, and all the electronic details. The data for these are: it sells at 500. The variable costs are 300. The monthly fixed cost of the production facility in Japan most likely is 200,000, and there's 1,600 units sold. And this is how you put that together. You have the per unit numbers. You generally don't see the per unit numbers in financial statements, but on the managerial side, you're going to see this. You're selling them for 500, and the variable cost is 300. Okay, and this was what, 1,600 units? Yeah, 1,600 units, and you had the $200,000 fixed cost there. So there you go. So say these were subtracted, which is how you get the 320. These are subtracted too. You pull out the 200,000, that gives you 120 earnings. Okay, if you own anything, you're going to care about that. The contribution margin is available to cover what's available to cover fixed costs and to contribute to the income. Here's the formula. Okay, we have that in front of us here. Okay, you subtract the selling price per unit, the variable cost per unit, and at this particular volume at 1,600, net income is zero. So in other words, you're just covering. And again, we're talking about these. I hope that we're right about this. This 500. Yeah, I think we're here. Yeah, actually, this is this is 1,000 units, not the 1,600. The 1,600 gives you a profit. Okay, we're here with this. There's a 1,600. The 1,000 gives us that. So yeah, so we're looking at that. Did it say that? How many of these? Okay, this is 1,001. This is 1,000. Yeah, like I said, it's tough to do these in the on the PowerPoints here like this. Now, if you're selling 1,001 camcorders, you get that $200 profit for that one more past 1,000, which is the break even. But again, I'll show you in Excel how to do all of this. And there's no break-even function. There's nothing like that. You've got to understand what's going on and be able to model it out and use your logic, okay, is what you really need to do. The contribution margin ratio shows a percentage of each sales dollar available to apply towards fixed costs and profits. And the formula for contribution margin ratio and the computation for the video business is here. So yeah, you took the 200 by the 500, and that's the ratio is 40%. And again, in financial statement analysis, you'll do a lot of that analysis. And we're changing. What are we changing here? Changing something. Okay, yeah. So there's a sales. You're selling more units from 500 to 600,000, and that's going to change obviously your earnings. And we have this all worked out in Excel, and we will with bells on, we will be working on that. Contribution margin is selling price less cost of goods of sold. Is revenue remaining after deducting variable costs, maybe expressed as contribution margin. Yes, it's A and B with this one. So contribution margin is revenue remaining after deducting variable costs, and it may be expressed as a contribution margin per unit. Okay, it's not selling price less cost of goods sold, because that doesn't, that you need a per unit number is what you need with that. And here's finally, 47 slides in, our last 30 slides here, what we're going to talk about. This is what we're trying to get to, using mathematical equations, using contribution margin, using graphs. So you'll learn all this material. Okay, this is the process of finding the break-even point level of activity, which total revenues equals total costs, both fixed and variable. Okay. And yeah, and again, this is a model of what it looks like. But again, in Excel, we'll sit in Excel and we'll go through how to do this. And this will your algebra, you'll practice your algebra with this. So this will be your one equation, one unknown kind of a thing. So it's good math practice. And folks, let me tell you, I'm where I am because I taught in the math department at Rutgers when I was in my 20s. That's why I got to the point where if I just did a finance program, if I just did an MBA, I don't think I'd be the person that I am today. It's because I taught in the math department at Rutgers Newark that made me sort of what I am. Okay. And also what I like about this particular, and the accountant version of this puts that net income term here. So again, this is assumed to be zero when you're breaking even, but they put it in there. So in other words, if you have a certain target net income that you're looking for, how many beds, how many patients you need to see, how many beds you need to fill in the hospital over the year to get a specific net income. Okay, and folks, I'm telling you, this type of computation, very important, because we had a long 150-page model over the summer for this hospital that we're working on, and various people worked on it and trying to sort through what it all meant. You really have to have the mind to understand what we're looking at right now. Understanding this stuff will help you. This will help you understand stuff like that. Very important. So you have units and costs and sales and fixed costs. Okay. And now this, again, the accountants will say, oh, well, contribution margin must equal total fixed costs minus variable costs and things of that nature. The break-even point can be computed using either contribution margin per unit or contribution margin ratio. How to determine the break-even unit in units when you use the contribution margin per unit, and you take fixed costs, divide by that number, that kind of a thing. I mean, but again, I think just cycling through the model, going line by line, and then saying, hey, what does this mean? But looking at the different components of it, looking at the anatomy of it, I think it's going to, instead of trying to memorize, the contribution margin per unit or the ratio per unit and what's dollars and what's percentages, you're going to go bananas trying to memorize all this stuff. I don't have this stuff memorized myself, but I go through the models and I understand it. Okay, that's what I want to teach you guys to look at it that way. So you can see there's a lot of computations here. this graph. It's very important, and we'll show you in Excel how to do this. The sales line, the total cost line, the fixed cost line, and how to make all these graphs. Okay, very important. Okay, and the areas under the curves. This is something where, I hate doing these in my head, but it says a company sells 200,000 units for $4 a unit. The contribution margin is 25%. So this is 800,000, right? The 200,000 units times 4, and 25% of it. So the break even will be, what's left for fixed costs would be a quarter of that, would be 200,000, right? Is what that would be. Yeah. Okay. So, well, I mean, the sales in terms of break even, uh, if there's 25% less left. See, when you look at this, it's asking you without seeing the whole picture to just answer a specific question. And I'm really very opposed. The sale should be 800,000, right? Because it's a quarter of that. Because the margin is 25%. So, yeah, I mean, if you're selling, yeah, because you're covering, right, you're covering 200,000, right? That fixed cost, the sales are 800,000. Yeah. Okay, but like I said, you want that in front of you. Also, this is the charter flights example here. And it says something like the internet is wringing inefficiencies out of nearly every industry. Commercial aircraft spends 4,000 hours a year in the air. Chartered aircraft spend a fraction of that flying to Teterboro and places like that, in Linden Airport. They're sitting on the ground, not making any money 90% of the time. FlightServe saw a business opportunity in that fact for about the same cost as a first class ticket. FlightServe decided to match up executives with charter flights and small private jets. The executive would get a more comfortable ride and could avoid the hassle of big airports. FlightServe noted that the average charter jet has 8 seats, and all the seats are full. The company has 80% profit margin, and it would break even at an average about 3.3 full seats per flight. But again, we need the numbers for this. It says, how did FlightServe determine they would break even with 3.3? It's asking how that was done, is what it's asking somehow. There it is. 54. So FlightServe determined the break even by using the fixed cost. It's asking you to explain that formula. I don't know if I didn't look it up in the economist. I don't know if those numbers are in the formula that get you to the 3.3, but certainly we have problems where we can work on that. The fourth practical article here is about the Rolling Stones tours, and I have a bunch of what do you call it? I have a bunch of links to the actual tour data. See, folks, I was thinking about how I was going to discuss this with you guys yesterday. There it is. Yeah. Folks, the music industry and just sort of entertainment in general has changed dramatically in your lifetime, as you know it, because everything changed about 20 years ago. Music and MTV and radio and live concerts and things of that nature all changed about 20 years ago. At one time, entertainment was really based on radio stations and music, television airplay, and live, like Bruce Springsteen and the Rolling Stones. You guys probably don't know. I would say that it's some of my class, people wouldn't even know who the Rolling Stones or Bruce Springsteen are anymore. Shakira, right? That singer from Colombia, she's like the most clicked on entertainer, even more than Taylor Swift or whatever it is, because she has a global reach and language and all these other kinds of things that Taylor Swift doesn't. I don't even know who Taylor Swift is, to be honest with you, but or the country. I don't really follow any of that stuff anymore. But the Rolling Stones weren't even my era. The Rolling Stones were my cousin's era. The Rolling Stones came out in the 60s. Think about that. That's 60 years ago. And they're still entertaining. They're still up on stage and playing St. Louis and San Jose and the Madison Square Garden. They're still doing all that stuff. So they've somehow survived. Now the band is down to about, I think, 2 original members. The drummer just passed away. The bass player retired. One of the original guitarists passed away in the 60s under suspicious circumstances. So, uh, uh, it was entertainment was based on listening to the radio. And then in the 80s, MTV came along in 81, and that was a big seismic shift. And then when YouTube came along in the late 90s, I suppose, that really changed everything. And bands like Metallica were suing, and this is our and Prince, and this is our work, and we should be and that's true. I don't disagree with that. But like with my lecture, I put this stuff online. Whoever wants to watch it can watch it. I don't say, hey, you owe me for watching this video. I have a very Grateful Dead attitude. The Grateful Dead, again, you guys don't even. The Grateful Dead dissipated, or the original singer died, almost a decade before you guys were even born. Jerry Garcia died in, I think, 1995 or so, and you guys were probably born in 202 or 201 or 2000, something like that. So he died a good 5 or 6 years before you guys were even on this earth. But they were a band where they told their audience, if you want to record us, here's some electrical outlets. They would put electrical outlets in the audience if people wanted to plug in their tape recorders to record their show. So you were there, you paid, and they said, I think Jerry Garcia had a great quote. He goes, once we made our music, it's for the world to enjoy. It's not for us to make money from it. But they were in business for a long time. And they did it basically on the live show. They didn't do it on record sales or any. They did it on performance, and you could count on a Grateful Dead tour schedule every year for 30 years. I mean, and they played the big stadiums in Chicago and San Francisco, and they come to New Jersey and Buffalo and places like that, Pittsburgh, the very blue collar zip codes. They would. I don't know how well they did in Georgia or Alabama, places like that, or Florida, or whatever it might be. But certainly, they toured, maybe not just the big stadiums, in the lesser known places. But they certainly, San Francisco, they were huge because they were from San Francisco. New York, New Jersey, they were huge. Buffalo, huge. Pittsburgh, huge. Chicago, I think their last show was in Chicago. But anyway, so we have an example of entertainment and ticket sales and what these guys make it. And look, this, I'm not trying to burst anyone's bubble here, but with the Rolling Stones, I mean, yeah, you go see them, you'll be entertained, but it's not the energetic show that you would have seen 40 years from 81 or something, or the 78 touring, or 75 or something like that. It's not that show. Okay, it's it's guys who are pushing 80 who are making so much money that they're someone's throwing 10 million at you, every night. You're going to do something about it, and they're doing something about it. So, but we'll get to that. So anyhow, another example here, Lombardi, whatever it is, they're selling units at tiles or something at $400 per box or something. And the costs are $240, and to run the shop is $880,000 a month or something. What's the break even? So the formula, as I'm hitting the buttons, here's how the formulas are developed. And again, in Excel, we will develop all this. Selling price 400 Q is per quantity or per unit. Variable costs are 240 Q per unit. Fixed is 180. And then you solve for Q. So in other words, Lombardi Tiles got to sell 1,000 boxes of tiles at $400 a box to keep their shop open, that kind of a thing. Then we have the margin per unit, the break. There's another way to determine break even. So in other words, you're just covering fixed income or fixed costs is what you're doing with this. Okay. Target net income is an important component of all of this. Sales levels necessary to achieve a specific income can be determined from each of the approaches used. Math equation, contribution margin, cost, volume, profit, expressed in sales units or sales dollars. Are you in euros? Are you in units? What are we talking about here? And again, we're back to our math equation here. What our break even is for not break even. If you want a target income of 120,000, how many units do we need to sell? So you got to cover variable costs, you got to have sales, and all this adds up to give you, you subtract out these two pieces, and it gives you 120,000 is what that gives you. Okay, so again, we have this all worked out in Excel, and we'll do that. And now we want to determine required units in sales, required sales in dollars. And again, you got the specific equations on how to do all that. When we get to Excel, we'll go through in fine detail where all this came from. So this is the formula for required sales in units using contribution margin per unit, formula for required sales in dollars using contribution margin. Okay. So you have all that. The equation for computing required sales is going to be the variable plus fixed plus target income. And again, getting to the break even, you can do it graphically, you can do it with the tables. Actual or expected sales at a break even point measures the cushion that management has for expected sales if expected sales fail to materialize. And they can be expressed in dollars or as a ratio. Actual sales, break even sales. And there's your margin of safety for, and again, Warren Buffett's a big proponent of that. And then margin of safety in terms of a ratio, what that is, expected sales, and then, in the denominator, and margin of safety sales in the numerator, and actual versus predicted or estimated. You're going to be dealing with that kind of thinking for, a lot of your potential models are out there. Actual sales were 600,000, break even were 420. The margin of safety ratio would be 180 over 600. So that's the 30. Yeah, because that's times, is it about a little bit over 3 times or something? So if the sales were 420, it's going to be, it's like 200 over 6. Yeah, it's going to be about 30%. So it's going to be that. This is the Rolling Stones example that we worked this all, and again, I have this worked out in Excel for you guys. There is a website that goes back, that'll go back to the 60s, and it'll tell you, certainly the further back it goes, I'm sure the more of an estimation that's in there. The last 25 years or so, or 30 years, you probably got back to 89, you probably have good data, or even 81. But if you go back into the 60s, who knows, what those tours were like, and T-shirts and memorabilia and parking and all these other kinds. So if we just quickly look through this, it says what amount of sales dollars are required for the promoter to break even. Computing a computation of break even or margin of safety is important for service companies. Somebody, John Shear or what's the guy? Ben Graham. Is it Ben Graham? I see his face. The guy out in San Francisco. I forget if it was Graham or Ben, something like that. But he's passed away now. But he was the big promoter in San Francisco for Tom Petty and the Grateful Dead, and very Italian name. He promoted shows, classy versions of this. John Shear, and now it's Live Nation, I think it is. So what is the band going to make? What's the Meadowlands? What are they going to make? So 70,000 people head out to the old Giant Stadium, and the gross is 2.5 million people walking in there. The promoter guarantees 1.2 million to the band, so almost half, and 20% of the gross goes to the stadium. Another 400,000 for ticket takers. You're paying the staff for the night, and then the promoter shares in the sales of the T-shirts. The promoter can net 7 million during a whole tour, and from an average tour, and then for a high profile act like the Rolling Stones, it could be 35 million. And it says what amount of sales dollars are required for the promoter to break even. And this would be the 1.2 million, the 400,000, so 1.6. So the ratio would be the sales have to be 2 million. You'd want the sales to be 2 million for something like this, because you want a ratio of what you have here, 80%. So because you owe the band 1.2, you owe the ticket guys 400, so you got to get to 1.6. Okay. And then there's that other 400,000 that you need So yeah, but like I said, but we have this all worked out. We have this worked out in Excel. So don't be, we'll run back to it and we'll go through the good detail on that. And I spent the time looking to get the data for the websites. We're getting to the finish line here. It says the statement revisited. You have variable and fixed costs. You have selling expenses, administrative expenses. You have cost of goods sold. So now it's getting a little more accounting, and you're breaking some up. Some are variable costs and some are fixed costs. Okay, so that's what that looks like. And then, again, creating these statements, very important. Now, you'll never see a financial statements broken up into variable and fixed expenses. That's usually managerial territory, but this is what it looks like. This is a calculator company. They've got a break even, a contribution ratio, margin of safety. And again, all this stuff will work this out. So this is what you're selling units, $20 a unit, fixed costs are $220, the variable costs are $9. Okay, all that. And again, this is just I just ran through what the PowerPoint is showing you there. The $9 the 9 comes from here, the 220 comes from there, the 20 comes from over there. Break even is 0. You divide by 220 by 11 to solve for Q, that gives you 20,000. But again, we're going to work on that in Excel. And then you have all this other stuff: the contribution margin per unit, the contribution margin ratio, the break even in dollars, the break even in percentages, what's the margin of safety. Okay, well, all of this we'll work all of this out. But these are the problems. At the conclusion, in a few classes of what we're trying to communicate to you guys, it's going to be how to do all of this. Okay, but don't worry about that. We're not. I'm not. I have no fantasy that this is clear just from a PowerPoint. It's not. It's not. And then now you're altering this, saying, okay, well, instead of breaking even, I want my income is 165. What's my quantities to get to 165 net income? What are the sales? What are the units? You had 35,000 currently to get that, and previously you needed only 20,000. So it was almost whatever. It was a good 75% more in terms of sales. Okay, to have a different net income other than 0. We're to the appendix. Variable costing, direct materials, direct labor, variable manufacturing overhead costs are considered product costs. Companies recognize fixed manufacturing overhead costs as period costs when these things are incurred. Absorption costing, variable costing. Well, this is, if this was an accounting course, we would really care about this, right? Because you'll see this on CPA exams and things of that nature, the managerial accounting exam, where it is another example here, and it goes through selling prices and units and variable costs and putting together direct materials and labor, variable overhead. It's all the accounting detail that's involved in this. We might run through this, and this is worked out in Excel. We could run through this, and it's showing you the differences between absorption costing and variable costing, and the differences between those is based on the data. Each unit sold and each unit remaining in inventory is costed at $13 under absorption costing and $9 under variable costing. Remember the first in, first out, or the different ways to measure inventory, the different defined methodologies for costing, can impact taxes and impact, if you're a publicly traded company, what you report to the SEC. What are the rules you can follow to determine your it's not as simple as it may seem. Okay, it's really not. So and again, here's your income statement, gross profit, variable expenses, cost of goods sold, inventory. And again, so we'll repeat this. Again, the folks who were with me last semester, we worked on this. Again, if this was an accounting class, I think we'd really care a lot about doing, hitting all this. Like I said, this is better explained in an Excel spreadsheet. We have variable costing example, absorption costing examples, and it's this stuff. It's sort of when you're recognizing certain costs. Okay. Toothbrushes produced, toothbrushes sold, all that stuff. Income under the different costing methods, the rationale, who gets to read the things. Okay, so all right, so there you go. Okay, so we got through, and like I said, all those you can see, and it's done a lot of detail here. The next set of videos, it's going to be, I'm going to go through, you know, and this is going to take a couple classes, you know, really how to generate these tables, and we'll explain everything, and we'll work out a lot of problems. Here's the appendix, and like I said, in an accounting class, we would really care about this, but we'll see. We'll see what our schedule is like. And folks, just to let you know, the folks from last semester were aware of this. I had a very important business trip planned for the fall that got pushed to next week, actually. So you're going to be on your own for about 3 classes, especially the because I might be gone the 25th, the 30th, and the 1st. So for the 207, I hate to do it to you guys. For the 207 guys, and when we the 23rd, and then you're going to rely on 2 YouTube lectures, and then we'll pick it up. We're going to pick it up live, after I get back, victoriously getting back, hopefully, right? Quite a thing that we're working on, and I'll tell you more about it when we're together in class. Okay. All right, so we got through the PowerPoints here. Get rid of this thing. Okay, we got through the PowerPoints. I hope this was you again for the first time viewers of my lectures. Hopefully this was useful for you guys, and for the folks from last semester, it's a repeat of sort of how we work. But the new folks, and you guys are a little bit younger. The 207, you guys are a little bit younger. This is how I work. The company I work for is based in Florida now. When I met them, obviously they were up here, but they moved long ago. It's not the pandemic didn't push them down to Florida. They moved to Florida a long time ago. So they saw it coming. Okay, and I'll try to maybe help you guys be a little bit predictive in terms of what's going on with the future too. So all right, folks, we'll see you soon. Watch these lectures.